Steve Kerr hit close to home to me. We talked about him losing his father to gun violence. I lost my mother at the age of 5 to gun violence. And so a lot of people don't realize until it happened to them, right? And then you go to Texas. I can't speak for the country, but I know I could speak for Texas, a state that I was raised in, a state that I reside in. And you look at the leadership, right? It starts with the leadership. You look at, Greg Abbott, Ted Cruz, who's the leaders or so-called leaders who make these rules and things to that nature. And I go back to just thinking about the little thing of an ice storm.
Former NBA player and Texas native Kendrick Perkins did not hold back on naming those responsible for these tragedies.
And I watched people there was millions of people that struggled, didn't have power, didn't have water, didn't have food through an ice storm. And then you watch our senator who represents the state get on the plane with his family and go to Cancun. Okay, bypass all that. We here today, we're talking about this. I knew things were going to happen like this, and it's sad to say, for the simple fact that when they passed this law last September, I actually tweeted out and said I'm thinking about relocating my family, just because it's like the wild, wild west in Texas, okay? It's so bad to the point that I have a 10-year-old son. He's in the 4th grade. Guess what? He's in homeschool because I don't feel safe with him or my other kids going to school, for the simple fact that it's too easy, not just for high schoolers and teenagers, but people in grade school to get to guns and bring them to school, and for tragedies like this to happen.
And as a concerned American and parent, there is not a damn thing he is missing on here.
So unless, the leaders or quote unquote leaders decide to put their pride and power aside and make the necessary adjustments to keep everybody safe, then look, we're not going to have change, and we're going to continue to be dealing with these type of situations.
Perkins, like many of us, are just so frustrated. We are frustrated, angered, that this continues happening, that a country that is deemed so great has such a glorifyingly evil fault that is enabled by the gun lobby. You want to know why school children continue dying? Look no further than Republican politics. These folks stand in the way. When confronted by a British reporter, Rafael Cruz pulled a mini Cancun, running away from the problem at hand with no solution except his own interests. He cowardly pivoted to talking points of, it's easy to go to politics, then posturing that it's the Democrats' fault. Then if you're playing Republican bingo, it's likely right smack dab in the middle of your card, the media. Yeah, the media is bad. Blame, blah, 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 rinse, wash, repeat, BS through it all. The reporter, however, did not give up like many in the American media circles would do. The reporter then grilled the senator further, digging into why the country that the senator alleged was the safest country on earth had experienced 288 school shootings between 2009 and 2018, wrote The Independent. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism so awful, the reporter asked, as he and his team were darting away from the on-the-spot interview. Cruz answered some of the reporter's questions, calling the team propagandists, and then closed by defending his claim from earlier that the U.S. was one of the safest in the world by saying, why is it that people come from all over the world to America? Because it's the freest, most prosperous, safest country on earth. You cannot call yourself great and safe when school children just died, and school children died before that, and school children died before that. This is not a sane person speaking, is Senator Rafael Cruz. This is a person who has no shame, is bought by the gun lobby, where they stick their hand up his ass, put their fingers to his mouth, and play him like a freaking puppet. Because instead of solving the problem, we need to blame every other thing aside from the actual weapon of choice, which is how they remain and retain their power and remain in office. Then, of course, because they just can't resist, they give the "what about Chicago" defense, as corrupt Texas Governor Greg Abbott gave as a meaningless defense. This lackluster, bigoted pivot is depressing as much as it is predictable. Of course, what Abbott won't tell you is nearly 60% of guns recovered in Chicago come from out-of-state dealers, with more than 20% traced back to Indiana, according to Gun Trace report, which showed that nearly a quarter of the guns recovered in Chicago were sold by just 10 federally licensed firearms dealers, 7 in Illinois and 3 in Northwest Indiana. Furthermore, the folks at the Clarion Ledger did some digging and found a large number of those firearms came from not just neighboring Indiana, but also the state of Mississippi, the Magnolia State. Almost the entire length of Illinois and 2 states away from Chicago is about 600 miles away from the state line. Yet the report found more guns come from the Magnolia State than any other southern state, 756 from 2013 to 2016, the third most of any state. That's more than the entire state of Wisconsin, 599 just north of Chicago, and more than double that of Kentucky and Tennessee, both north of Mississippi and with similarly lax gun laws. And from 2001 to 2012, of the more than 15,000 guns police trace from just outside Chicago, almost a third, 4,296, came from Mississippi. To Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, why won't y'all mention this? I thought getting down to the nitty-gritty and finding the facts of things is priority, no? Well, it's simple. Because it doesn't fit their narrative of blaming a predominantly black city. One Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick likely features in his bigoted, pea-sized brain as he rambled off great replacement theory rhetoric. This man has legitimate power and spews white supremacy talking points. Wake up, people. As Brandon Rottinghouse, a professor of political science at the University of Houston, said, Dan Patrick was Donald Trump before Donald Trump was.